At the height of the Cold War, one mistake on a checkered board could echo across the world. A single move, watched by millions, could humiliate a superpower. This wasn't about a game. It was about proving which system produced the sharper mind, the steadier nerve, the superior human. And when one man finally broke the pattern, it shocked more than the chess world. Because for decades, the outcome had seemed inevitable. When the Bolsheviks seized power, they inherited a country that was poor, fractured, and suspicious of elite culture. Chess, once a pastime of aristocrats and intellectuals, could have been discarded as a relic of the old world. Instead, the Soviet state transformed it. To Soviet leaders, chess looked like the perfect ideological tool. It was rational, scientific, disciplined, a game where planning mattered more than luck, and long-term strategy defeated impulsive brilliance. If socialism claimed to be a system guided by reason, then chess became its proof. By the early 1920s, chess was everywhere. Workers' clubs, army units, schools, factories. The state printed magazines, organized mass tournaments, and sent instructors across the vast Soviet Union. Even during famine and economic crisis, chess funding continued. This was not accidental. The message was clear. A modern socialist society trained minds, not just muscles. And every victory mattered. When Soviet players defeated foreign masters, newspapers framed it as more than sport. Each win was evidence that the new system was overtaking the old bourgeois world. On the chessboard, socialism was learning faster. By the 1930s, chess in the USSR no longer resembled a hobby. It had become an industry. Training was systematic and relentless. Openings were dissected, endgames memorized, games analyzed collectively. Players studied not just how to win, but how positions evolved over dozens of moves. This approach became known as the Soviet chess school. Not a single style, but a philosophy. Chess as applied science. Talent was identified early. Promising players received stipends, coaches, housing, and time to train. Factories and universities ran chess sections. Elite institutes refined future champions. The results were overwhelming. After World War II, the World Championship became Soviet property. Botvinnik, Smyslov, Tal, Petrosian, Spassky. Different personalities, different styles, same flag. To the Soviet public, these men were heroes. To party officials, they were assets. Chess supremacy was no longer personal achievement. It belonged to the system. Behind the scenes, the pressure was immense. Top players were monitored politically. Foreign travel depended on loyalty. Privileges could vanish after a bad result or ideological misstep. And when the world title was at stake, collaboration was expected. Soviet grandmasters shared preparation. They analyzed opponents together. In some candidates' tournaments, Western observers noticed patterns. Quick draws between Soviet players, relentless pressure on outsiders. The goal was simple: keep the crown inside the block. Chess had become a front in ideological warfare. Losing it was unthinkable. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Iron Curtain, something very different was happening. For decades, the United States had no chess machine. No state funding, no centralized training, no ideological urgency. American players were freelancers, talented but isolated. Soviet dominance fed a quiet assumption. Maybe communism really did produce superior intellects. Then one player refused to accept that conclusion. He studied alone, obsessively, relentlessly. And he hated losing more than he loved fitting in. His name was Bobby Fischer. Fischer was everything the Soviet system was not. Individualistic, combative, paranoid, brilliant. He didn't believe in collective analysis. He believed in preparation so deep it broke opponents before the game began. As Fischer climbed the rankings in the late 1960s, the symbolism became impossible to ignore. One man versus an empire, an American loner challenging a state-backed dynasty. U.S. media took notice. So did politicians. For the first time, chess mattered in Washington. Because if Fischer won, it wouldn't just be a title. It would be proof that the Soviet intellectual monopoly could be shattered. And in 1972, that challenge finally reached its climax. By the summer of 1972, the Cold War had found its strangest battlefield. Not a jungle, not a desert, but a quiet hall in Reykjavik, Iceland. The World Chess Championship was about to begin, and it carried more political weight than any match before it. For the Soviet Union, the title was not optional. It was a symbol of intellectual authority built over decades. Spassky, the reigning champion, was calm, versatile, and deeply respected. Behind him stood a team of Soviet grandmasters, analysts, and officials who understood exactly what was at stake. For the United States, there was only one man. No team, no system, just Bobby Fischer. From the moment he arrived, chaos followed. Fischer delayed. He complained. He demanded changes to lighting, cameras, chairs, prize money. To Soviet officials, it looked like sabotage. To journalists, it was theater. Some believed Fischer was unraveling. Others suspected something else. The delays unsettled Spassky. They disrupted preparation. They shifted attention away from the board and onto Fischer's presence. When the first game finally began, Fischer shocked everyone, including himself. He made a reckless mistake and lost. The Soviet camp relaxed. Then Fischer didn't show up for Game 2. He forfeited. 2 games down. The match seemed over before it began. And then everything changed. Game 3 was moved to a back room. No audience, no cameras, just 2 men and a board. Fischer won. From that moment on, the match followed a pattern no one had seen before. Fischer dismantled Spassky in positions the Soviet school was supposed to dominate. Endgames, technical battles, long, grinding struggles. Spassky began to crack. He stood to applaud Fischer after one loss. A gesture of respect but also resignation. Behind the scenes, pressure mounted. Soviet officials worried about sabotage, about hypnosis, about hidden devices, but there was no conspiracy, just preparation. Fischer didn't just win games, he broke assumptions. The Soviet chess school had claimed superiority through collective study and ideology. Fischer showed that obsession, independence, and raw intellectual discipline could match and surpass it. He prepared alone, but deeper. He rejected shortcuts. He forced opponents into positions where understanding mattered more than theory. By the end of the match, the score was undeniable. 12-2. For the first time in decades, the world champion was not Soviet. In the United States, Fischer became a cultural icon overnight. Chess sets sold out. Schools started clubs. Magazines framed the victory as proof that individual freedom still mattered. In the Soviet Union, the loss was quietly devastating. Officials searched for explanations, structural weaknesses, psychological factors, but the truth was uncomfortable. The system had been beaten at its own game. Fischer would never defend his title. The moment passed as quickly as it arrived, but the symbolism endured. Chess remained a Cold War metaphor. Calculation, patience, brinkmanship. Tournaments continued to serve as contact zones between rival worlds, and Soviet dominance, though eventually restored, never felt absolute again. When the USSR collapsed, the machine that sustained chess supremacy collapsed with it. Funding vanished, control loosened. The era of chess as state ideology ended. Today, the Soviet chess school lives on in textbooks, training methods, and legends. So does the memory of a time when a board game carried global meaning. Chess didn't decide the Cold War, but for a brief moment, it reflected everything the Cold War was. 2 systems, 2 philosophies, 1 board, and the realization that even the most carefully constructed dominance can be undone. 1 move at a time.